Welcome to the Six Figure Secrets for Fractional Experts podcast. My name is Bradley Jacobs. I'm your host, the founder and CEO of Mylance. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Candyce Edelen. Candyce, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this. I love your podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. So Candyce is a multi-time founder, seasoned entrepreneur, and lately she's been teaching people how to use LinkedIn to build trust, build authority. So really excited to have this conversation. We obviously do this at Mylance and talk a lot about how to use LinkedIn effectively. So super excited to get your take. Would you elaborate on that intro in any way of what you're doing now?
Sure. I think that the big difference between what we do and what you do is that we don't do any done for you services. We help people to crack the code on LinkedIn to do it themselves. And there's always those people that need the done for you services too. But we focus on human to human connection and engagement. With the advent of AI and these automated bots that are constantly spamming us, I think it's more important than ever to stand out as a human. And so we teach both a posting content strategy, a commenting strategy, what I like to call an influencer strategy, which is kind of leveraging the people that influence your audience, that your audience is following, and engaging with them on LinkedIn to then build your own audience. And then how to use connection requests and direct messages to start actual human to human conversations that you can transition over to a Zoom call or whatever. And then how to gently migrate that into a discovery call where the prospect never feels sold to.
Amazing. So there's so much there. I have so many questions. Maybe we can start with the automation, the AI piece, right?
Oh yeah.
And it floods our inboxes, right? We're all receiving it. And the biggest thing that we don't want to be for, all of our customers and ourselves included is we don't want to just add to that noise.
Exactly.
So yeah, how do you think about that? And more than the generic answer of like, yes, like AI is not super targeted and it's not super personalized. And like, let's go deeper if we can into what's really going on with those tools. And then how do we really differentiate ourselves without spending 30 hours a week in LinkedIn?
That's a great question. There's a lot to unpack there. Let's start with I don't believe that you can automate a relationship with another human being in a B2B world. You can try, but we can't replace ourselves with a bot and expect that bot to accomplish what we can accomplish as human beings. What bots are good at and automating that outreach is scale. And a lot of people think that they need scale because they are getting a poor response rate. And so their idea of instead of changing up the messaging strategy is to just pump more volume through. And I lovingly call that annoyance at scale. I am convinced in a B2B world, this is different than B2C sales. We're talking about selling high-end services, whether we're a fractional or a consultant. We need to build trust with our audiences. And I don't think that you can automate that relationship. And I don't think you can annoy a prospect into buying from you. And so those are kind of two key components that drive everything that we do. And what works on LinkedIn, in my opinion, I don't know if you've seen some of the comment spam that's happening lately where people are using AI to comment. People think that they're checking a box and getting something accomplished in that. But what fascinates me is the responses that I get from our trainees, the students in our accelerator who are learning how to use LinkedIn. And I had somebody come to me a couple months ago where she was trying to leverage our influencer strategy and go comment on posts that are attracting her target audience. And she dropped a comment, a really insightful comment on a very good post. I mean, the post was really solid, Bradley. And she dropped an insightful comment, and the poster came back and replied to that comment. And this person, my student, came back to me saying, I think this woman's mad at me for my comment. I don't know what I did to aggravate her, but the way that she commented back makes me think she didn't like the fact that I dropped a comment on her post. And I went and looked at it because I'm like, why would anybody not want you to comment on a post? And I looked at it and her comment was great, but the response from the original poster was just restating the original post. And so my client was thinking that she was trying to redirect the audience to the original post. But what I think was happening there, and as you examined more of this person's replies, she was using AI to reply. And what it did is instead of creating the connection and the community, it created distance so that my student's response was, well, I don't think I'll ever comment on that person's posts again.
Yeah. Yeah. AI is not good enough. It doesn't know how to build personal connection or add value, right? And it's so clear. I mean, people are definitely using AI to comment on my posts on LinkedIn. To some degree, I'm annoyed because they don't add value and it's super generic.
Right.
And to some degree, like, well, if you're going to, it helps my post a comment at all, right? So it
In
like kind of,
theory.
right? It's this, I don't love it, but also it's going to add comments on my post. It's not the end of the world, but I do wish it was more insightful.
I just think, for everybody listening who's trying to build relationships, to build trust, to attract an audience, to think about the fact that if you try it, it's not going to accomplish what you're hoping it will accomplish. It creates distance and like you said, Bradley, aggravation rather than the connection that is the whole purpose.
Yeah. So let's go into, because there's two parts to the LinkedIn strategy, right? There's growing your network by adding
Mhm.
new connections on a daily, weekly basis, and then there's of course content, where I guess original posting and commenting. I'll just throw into the content bucket.
Yeah.
Let's start with the first piece. So growing your network with the right people, and you of
Mhm.
course talk about building relationships with them genuinely.
Mhm.
Um, but there's a reason you want to build a relationship with that person, right? There
Right.
is a motive. And so, talk to me through how you recommend for your students to build a quote genuine relationship, but knowing that there is a time where I'm going to see if there's an opportunity to work together.
Right. And I think that's the operative thing. I'm going to see if there's an opportunity. I'm not going to assume there's an opportunity. I'm not going to pitch slap you. Um, and just, like some people think pitch slapping is efficient for the client to just kind of get past that. But I don't agree. I think pitch slapping is just annoying. And so the way that I approach it is we have to start with being genuinely interested. I think that we want to be interesting to people, but we start by being genuinely interested in them. Dale Carnegie wrote that, it's like if you want people to be interested in you, be interested in them. I think that that really makes a difference. And so the way that I approach starting conversations on LinkedIn is to express genuine interest in something that they have posted, something on their profile, something on their website, where I can ask a question that strikes up a conversation. And it's not about me, it's about them. And by being genuinely interested in something that they have to say and striking up the conversation, I'm much more likely to be able to transition that into a Zoom call or an in-person coffee meeting. But it starts with picking the right topic to be interested in. So, like, I'll give you a positive example and a negative example to describe these. So, I was doing a bunch of outreach to the commercial real estate space to offer consulting services in content and thought leadership. And I wanted to go after the commercial real estate technology players, but I really needed to know more about the industry because I was new to that space. I needed to know more about the industry. So I started reaching out to both the technology players and also their customer base, the investors that are buying the $85 million building. And I reached out to them, and I looked for people who were in some way engaged in a transition that was happening in the market toward data-driven decision making. I'm saying that 3 times fast. And so I would reach out to them saying, hey, Bradley, I saw your post on using data to drive decisions, and I'm noticing a trend on that. I would love to chat with you about your thoughts on whether this trend makes sense for the commercial real estate. Oh, and by the way, last week I had conversations with 3 other investors, and I'm happy to share with you with their thoughts and get your point of view on it, your perspective. The more conversations I can say I've just recently had, the easier it is to get those meetings. And then that made it really easy for me to get meetings with my target audience, which was the tech companies. It's like I just had 5 conversations with people in large investment management firms, and I'd love to share with you what I'm hearing from them and get your take on it. And so that allowed me to book those meetings. And genuinely, I mean, I really, really wanted to have that conversation about the data-driven decision making. It wasn't just a ploy to get on the phone with them. Then when we got into the dialogue, I started to ask them a little bit more about what their business goals were. Now, I've actually tweaked that in the years since I did that first initial outreach. By the way, that initial outreach landed me over 6 months, 125 calls with this target audience. I wrote a pretty long piece on the insights that I was collecting from it, because when you have 125 calls, you actually can develop your own thought leadership position and perspective and point of view. That article got purchased by one of the trade publications, and I got booked to speak at conferences on it.
Wow.
So there's more to this strategy than just booking sales calls, but also out of those 125 sales calls, not all which were with my actual target prospects, I sold $438,000 of business. So it got me both accomplished. Now, since then, I've transitioned a little bit in how I do those calls. If I'm not actually working on content strategy at the same time, then I might just say, Bradley, I've been really looking forward to talking with you about data-driven decision making, whatever it is. But before we get started, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you. Could you tell me, a little bit about your background and your current situation and the obstacles you're dealing with? Now, I find that with my LinkedIn profile and the headline being super well aligned with what I want to talk about, they kind of automatically, I've left that an open-ended question, but 90% of those conversations, they tell me about their challenges with LinkedIn. And so then we may never actually get to the original point of the conversation, because then I'm going to just start to do some discovery. Oh, really? Tell me more about that. Why do you think people aren't looking at your posts, or whatever it is that they mention? And I can drill in and uncover an opportunity without them ever feeling like they're being sold to.
Okay, amazing. So let's break this down. I want to make this as tangible as possible. So, and I've been taking a little bit of notes as you've been talking. So we're starting with, of course, the general concept being genuinely interested in them, right? This is not about
Yes.
pitching you or frankly, nobody cares about you, right? I'm blunt sometimes about it. It's just true, right?
Exactly.
Right. They care about themselves and they're happy to talk about themselves most often. So, okay, we're going to pick a topic we're going to be genuinely interested in them.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to pick a topic that they care about. Mm-hmm. And I heard you say it's important to say, and I've also talked to X number of people before you.
Right. Which doesn't work for the first one, but it works for the second.
Okay. And why, let's just drill into that for a second. Why is that effective, do you think?
Because people want to know what their competition is thinking.
Cool. So do you think if I go back, or maybe as part of this note, say, hey, I'm compiling this article on how XYD thinks about something, or XYZ does something, and I'll send you the comprehensive article at the end, right? That's going to be a value add.
It was a huge value add in getting those meetings, especially the first few. And I was very open about that. It's like, look, I've been asked to write this article. I would love to quote you on it, but if I try to quote you, I will 100% come back to you to get approval on that. There's no way I'll use your name in this without your explicit approval. Yes, I'll be happy to share it with you and include a link to your company if you want that. So all of those are just added value adds that makes them even more interested in taking the call.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so we are going to pick a topic they care about, ask for a conversation that's contributing to an article or a white paper or something of the sort.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to basically say, like, do you have 30, do you have some time to chat about this? And then I heard you say something interesting, right? You said you actually might start the conversation asking them about obstacles that they're facing now.
Mm-hmm.
Why that versus simply saying, hey, like I'm writing this article and would love your take on it?
Okay, so these are two distinct strategies.
Okay.
One is the article, which is quite frankly a significant amount of work.
Yeah.
You could say I'm writing a series of LinkedIn posts on this and make that simpler for you.
Sure.
But sometimes I don't want to work on an article. I just want to get some sales leads. So the other approach is I'll start a conversation based on something they posted, a comment they dropped, something on their profile, something on their website that says, hey, you know what? I'm really interested in hearing more about your perspective on that. And in that case, I don't mention the article or research. It's all about, I have a perspective I'm open to sharing with you, but I'm more interested in what you have to say on this topic. Now, there's a couple of steps in this strategy that is important. One is I try to start that dialogue just in LinkedIn in the DMs rather than going straight for the meeting. Now, some people will reply to me like, yeah, I'd love to talk to you. Here's a link, to my meeting, or are you available next Tuesday? That happens often, but I try not to push there. So my connection request will be, hey, Bradley, I saw your post on X and I'd really be interested in hearing more about your perspective. Can we connect? And then I'll usually ask a question in that connection request that it's a closed question. So it's really, really important to ask it as a closed question because I'm assuming that they're rushing between meetings and they're probably responding to me on their phone. Um, and they have 2 minutes. And so I want to give them something that they can just tap out yes, no, or yeah, we had 3 of those, or something like that, where it's just a phrase. If they want to give me a longer answer, they can, but I want to make it easy for them because my goal is to get a connection and a reply. I find that if I just get the connection, it's much more difficult for some reason to get a dialogue going. And so I'm always going to send the personalized connection request looking to get them to reply to me. And then I can keep that going. And I find that it usually takes me 2 or 3 back and forth DMs before I go for the meeting, just because there's so many people right now that are leaning into this from an automated perspective where they're just going straight for the meeting. And so I want to differentiate from that and really get them engaged in dialogue.
Yeah. So the question I have is, and I'm a skeptical user, and I think a lot of people are these days, that if I actually just got one this morning where someone said, hey, saw what you're doing at Mylance, looks really interesting. Curious what motivated you to start the company.
Yes, that's so common.
And it's look, I actually did answer, but the little like skeptical antenna is already up in my head of like I looked at their profile, what are you going to try and sell me?
Yeah.
And I can't be the only one with that thought when I get a honest question. It is a good question, right? I want to answer it and I did answer it. But if they immediately flip to, well, now I do this, or they even get me on a call and then they try and sell me something, I'm going to feel bait and switched. I am.
Yeah.
So how do you think about that? Because I love the strategy of I'm interested in your perspective on this, or tell me about the obstacle you're facing with this. Like, yes, it's a great way to start the conversation because you're getting to their pain point that you might be able to solve. Like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do we avoid the bait and switch? I'm genuinely curious about your business. And then, oh, wait, I might do exactly, like I'm going to sell you at some point. Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of comments on that. One is that strategy is they're sending that same message to everybody, and
Yep.
frankly, you could write a whole book on the answer. So
Yes.
they're violating principle one, make it an easy thing to answer,
Okay.
and they're violating principle two, show genuine interest. They're not genuinely interested. They probably automated that. So, a trick for avoiding some of the spam in your inbox and the pitch slapping that will immediately follow that is before accepting, I reply to them, "Hey, Bradley, thanks for the connection request. What exactly led you to reach out to me?"
Hmm.
And what's interesting about that is how few people respond.
Yeah.
And I think it's because the bots don't surface a message that comes in before a connection request is accepted. And these morons, I'm sorry, but they are not logging into LinkedIn and checking their freaking inbox.
No, they're not.
And so great news for me because I just then if they don't respond for a couple of weeks, I just ignore, and that keeps my inbox free of spam. Okay, so that was tip one there, which was not what you asked, but a little tip. Okay, so how do I differentiate from that spammer who's sending that generic message? I'm not going to ask you a question like that. I'm going to ask you something that's much more specific to what you're doing. So I'm going to go through your posts and look at what you do and why you do it. And I'm going to ask you something specific. So that's the first thing. You're going to be able to tell immediately that I looked at your profile because, it's like I might ask something about, are you focused more on fractional execs that are just getting started with their fractional business, or do you tend to support the ones that are more established? I might ask a question like that. It's easy for you to answer. It's a closed question. And it's clear that I looked at your profile, at least glanced at it before I sent that message.
That's helpful. I do want to go back to the question, if you're willing to say, okay, that is a good question. It's easy for me to answer. We're focused on more experienced fractionals, right? I want them, okay, for a lot of reasons I don't need to go into right now, but more experienced, have the long-term mindset, understand B2B sales, etc.
Right.
If you ask me that question and I answer, we're focused, hey Candice, thanks for the question. We're focused on more experienced fractionals. Why do you ask?
I would probably respond to you going, is that because they're more established businesses and you can actually help them more than somebody who's just trying to figure out their messaging?
And be
So
like,
I'd keep that
absolutely.
dialogue going.
Great. So
Right.
so now we have this dialogue. Let's play it out. I love this.
Okay,
We'll play it
let's
out.
do it. All right, you
Okay.
respond to me. Okay.
Right. So I'd
Now,
say
I'm going to
yes.
ask a question. That's a key is I'm going to always end with a question. And I look at it as a game of ping pong. Not a game of ping pong where I'm trying to win a score, but a game where the goal is to just keep the ball in the air. So I'm going to softball it to you so you can easily hit it back.
Right.
So my next thing, okay, so you answered that you focus on the experienced fractionals, and let's say that's all you said.
Okay.
Then I would ask you a question. Is that because the more experienced ones have a better established messaging and strategy for their business? Now, again, I've asked something that you can answer yes or no, but I'm lobbing it back to you.
Great. So I would say absolutely. That's exactly right.
Okay, then I would come back to you and say, I found a similar thing in what we're doing where the more experienced fractionals, they have their message down and they're really strong subject matter experts. Are you finding that too?
You're like, absolutely.
I would love to hear more about your perspective on this and how you're targeting the fractional market. I can share with you some of the ideas I'm exploring, get your thoughts on them. Would you be interested in having a call and just chatting about this?
So let's just say I'm like, sure. Because right now, I would say if I didn't know you and I got though, if we had this back and forth, I would say, what are you hoping is the purpose of that call? More so because I get asked for calls all the time. And if I said yes, I would never, find time to work on my own business. So I would probably ask you, that sounds interesting. What would be a good agenda for that call if we were to do it?
Ooh, that would be an awesome question. So I want to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
There's some assumptions here that we both know already because we specialize in LinkedIn, but not everybody does. We have a well built out profile, you and me. Our headlines are super optimized to speak to what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find that people are much, and I'm posting, you're posting, we're sharing content all the time, we're getting out there. Usually, before a person decides whether or not they're going to accept a conversation, they're going to go look at our profile and our content.
Yes.
And so it's done its job of selling me. And so I don't get a lot of pushback because they're like, yeah, I want to talk to you.
Got it.
Right? So that's number one. Number two is if you did ask that, the purpose of the purpose of my call is I'd really love to hear your perspective on what you think is working in approaching the fractional market and where you think people go wrong in this industry. Something like that. Because I really am, again, it goes back to genuine interest, right?
I'm going to challenge you for a second because
Okay.
if you said that to me, I would think that then now you're going to benefit from my perspective. And I feel like a giver in the conversation. Whereas I think if you offered something to me, like saying, hey, it looks like we're both experts in LinkedIn. I would love to share with you what I'm seeing work for a number of our students. I would be very excited to take that call. I'd be like,
That's
oh,
actually a much better approach. Yeah. Yeah,
because
I
now you're
agree.
offering value, right? So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yes, sign me up. The other one, I'm like, oh, like this woman seems really nice. She seems knowledgeable. I might take the time to share my perspective, but that would be a skepticism consideration. If you were offered something to me like that, even just the insights you've seen work, I'm on that call tomorrow.
I love that clarification. I think that that's so strong. And it goes back to what I've done, where I was trying to do this off the cuff, but
Mhm.
you're absolutely right. That's way better.
Okay, yeah, and I think the audience, people watching this, it's no matter if you live in it, it's so easy to go into like, do you mind helping me? Right? When
Yes.
we know, you and I both know that the better strategy is let me offer value. And then people are like, if you hit it, if you
Yeah.
nailed it, right?
With a caveat there, Bradley,
Yeah,
you probably get this too. A lot of times people think that giving free content is not a pitch slap. But it is a pitch slap if I didn't ask for the content.
yeah,
And so I think that there's this very fine line that we have to be really careful of. I'd love to share with you what I'm learning about the market and some perspectives, some surprising things I found out recently about the fractional space. But I'd really like to get your perspective on it. If I just tell you I want to share my perspective, then you're going to be like, yeah, this is a sales pitch.
Hmm.
I really think it needs to be this quid pro quo where, well, quid pro quo is not the right word. Exchange. And I also don't dismiss the fact that people like to be asked their opinion.
They do. They do. I would say personally, and maybe I'm a bit of an outlier, but I would say if you hit on my problems so perfectly and said, hey, if your customers might be able to see better results from some surprising strategies I could share with you, I would take you up on that in a heartbeat. Right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how could our customers be doing even better? I don't personally need to give my opinion. If you wanted it, sure. But just personally saying, like, if you offered that to me and said, I'm happy to jump on a call and share what's working for us, no strings attached, I would take you up on that in a second.
That's cool. Yeah, I think it really boils down to just being human, and you're never going to have the perfect message or the perfect
Totally.
connection request. It's more about being human and genuinely interested that
Yeah.
our pitch radar doesn't go up.
Yeah. So let's switch gears for a quick second because I mean this has been a fantastic conversation, and I love we're getting to the details and tangible things people can do when most of our customers are fractional executives, if anything, maybe a boutique agency with a few people. The biggest complaint is I don't have time,
Yeah.
right? And so and then I heard you say, like, we're not using the automated tools because they're not
Mhm.
personalized. We're not using AI. So it requires that personal touch.
Yeah.
And let's say I want to get, 15, 20 calls a month, right?
Mhm.
Is that fair?
I think that, well, yeah, I did 125 calls in 6 months. That was using the content strategy, which frankly was a little easier than finding a very personalized nugget to start a conversation. It can take longer to do the outreach when you're trying to find a personalized, unique nugget for each person.
Mm-hmm.
But when I booked that 125 sales calls over 6 months, I was spending roughly an hour and a half a day.
Hour and a half a day.
Today, I don't spend quite that much. I'm about an hour a day. I actually posted my own cadence a couple of days ago. So it would be um, probably December 9th or 10th that I posted my own cadence. And it's roughly an hour to an hour and a half a day that I spend. You can't do this without doing some level of effort. It's not like a switch that you can turn on and suddenly leads will come in. But anybody who pitches that to you, you should ignore anyway,
Oh,
because
for sure.
they're lying to you.
Yes. Okay. So this is what I wanted to get to. So let's say it's an hour a day, which feels totally reasonable, like 5 hours a week, maybe 7 hours a week if you're doing it 7 days a week. Like, if you can't commit to that for your marketing, for your business, you shouldn't be a business owner,
You better go
right?
find a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go find a job. Exactly. So in that hour per day, and my guess is you have broken this down on LinkedIn, but humor
Mhm.
us that are listening to this. What is the best like, how do you break down that hour? Like, what are you in reality, in practice, doing?
Okay, so it's broken up over the day. I start my day with about 15 to 20 minutes of digging into LinkedIn and looking at my notifications, making sure I'm engaging with anybody who's mentioned me, commented on me, dropped a comment on a post. I usually write my post in a block, like 2 or 3, 4 or 5 posts at once, and they're pre-scheduled. So there's been quite a bit of evidence that commenting on 4 or 5, 6 posts before your post goes live and 4 or 5, 6 posts after your post goes live helps to push your post out further into the comments. So I have a pretty intentional strategy of not just looking at my feed and letting LinkedIn tell me what to comment on, but actually going after the specific influencers that I want to engage because I want to attract their audience and commenting on their posts. If I've got prospects that are posting or clients that are posting, I'll go comment in their posts. But I'm really, really intentional about that strategy. So 15 minutes on that. And then I'll check whether I've got any inbound messages because usually I've got a pretty full inbox every morning. And so I try to reply to as many of those DMs as I can, and I'll check my inbound connection requests. And then I'm done. I get out, my post has gone live, I've done my commenting on both sides. Then an hour or so later, I'm monitoring my post. Like I had a post yesterday that just went nuts because Richard Vanderblom came in and commented on it. And I had the Vanderblom effect, what I'm lovingly calling it. And so that post is kind of going viral right now, making it like a huge time sink. But I'm grateful because it's attracting some really good prospects to me. But at any rate, normally I don't have viral posts. I have, a few people have commented, so I want to make sure that I reply to their comments. That usually takes, like little 5-minute blocks between meetings that I can just go in and drop replies to any new comments. Then I'm going to carve out some time to reach out to prospects. For me, I've got a list of prospects I'm going after. And so I may send 1 or 2 or 3 connection requests, depending on how much time I've got, and try to get them engaged in DMs. Yesterday, I spent an hour doing that because I had all these people dropping comments. So I looked at those and went out and reached out to the ones that are relevant. And then this morning, I had like an inbox full of messages. So I had to go take care of that. So sometimes it's going to spike a little bit just because I had a post that has gone, I have like over 100 comments on that post. So that can be
Amazing.
time consuming, but that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, no, it's totally one-offs yeah. The list, it sounds like the list is made up of people who have commented on your posts.
Hmm.
And then where else? I imagine the list, of course, is potential clients, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
whole point. So where do you get your list from?
Okay, so I do a lot, in addition to the fractional space, I do a lot in the Microsoft Dynamics reseller space.
Okay.
So it's a niche audience, and I go look for people who are posting about Dynamics, and I'll reach out to them if I'm not already connected to them, and then I'm also looking at who's engaging with those posts and finding the other resellers. And I'm targeting CXOs at those companies. There's usually small 30, 40 person companies. And so I'll reach out to the head of sales and the CEO of those companies to start conversations.
And tactically, is that Sales Navigator? Is that where are you actually getting the list of people to target?
I have Sales Navigator, but I have other resources to find those people because Sales Navigator doesn't always give you the greatest results on that. So there's there's an ERP software blog, which is like a group blogging site that all of their members are a target audience for me. So I go look at theirs and figure out which members I haven't already connected with. But then I'm also proactively reaching out to people that I'm already connected with. And then conferences, I'm going to those. And I also have subscribers that I have a lot of people who join my newsletter for LinkedIn tips. And so I'll reach out proactively to people who are great prospects there. Right now, we've got a bunch of people responding to a LinkedIn strategy quiz. So I'm going after those too.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing.
More than one source.
Yeah, as there should be, right? I mean, there's no one place, and it's interesting. I've not seen good success with Sales Navigator either, partially because it's just not detailed enough.
Yeah.
It's not targeted enough, and so we've actually built our own lead list builder where we put AI on top of a data set, so I can say where are the B2B companies, where are the SaaS companies, where are the companies that are like all of these different criteria. You can't even find a B2B SaaS list, for example, on
Right.
SalesNav. They don't have those filters.
That's a brilliant approach, Bradley. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we've taken the massive data set of a few 100 million companies with the criteria that they give you, right, of the company name, description, location, employee size. And then we actually ask AI for every company, is this a B2B or B2C? Is it SaaS or is it a marketplace? Is it a service based or physical product? And so then we have an enriched data set
Yeah.
of in much more detail. So if
Meaningful data.
right. So if you come to us and you say, "Hey, I need the service-based businesses with between, 50 and 100 employees in the United States that don't have a CMO," for
Yeah.
example, right? Like I
That's
can give you that
awesome.
list. Um,
Wow.
so we built our own because like the solutions out there, they don't do that.
There's
And
no solution that could answer that question.
I know, and we have it. So, yeah, we end up like building this ourselves for us, but then our customers, because all of our customers are experienced fractional executives. If they're a CFO, they don't want to target companies that already have a CFO.
Right. Right.
But you can't filter those out unless you did it one by one by one on LinkedIn. So we built a software. It's actually relatively simple. We say which companies are in this niche that meet these criteria that do not have a CFO. And then it's a much more targeted list.
That is brilliant. And then you can also be more specific about the niche because that's another problem. Navigator doesn't tell you. Like, if I want to focus on Microsoft Dynamics partners of less than 30 people who don't have a CMO and who target supply chain
Mm-hmm.
as their key area of expertise, you could probably deliver that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we built an AI where you can now actually just write a sentence, like kind of what you just described a sentence. So
Yeah,
like we have the data filters, but some things are not captured in the data filters, like target supply chain companies. I mean, that's not going to be in a filter anywhere, but
right.
you can now write that in a sentence and our AI will do a matching on a scale of 0 to 100. How good is the match for given the AI description that you gave? And we'll service only companies that I think we do 70 or higher if it's a match of
And
70.
can it go actually go to the websites? Because I mean, you could easily figure out whether they are supply chain oriented if it just looks at the website.
Right now we use the description that they put on LinkedIn
Okay.
And we say, and look, it's not perfect, right? It's
Yeah.
it's not 100%, but usually companies do a pretty comprehensive job describing what they do on LinkedIn, and
Right.
then the AI is going to interpret, like, does this work for supply chain companies or not? Do they target them?
That
So
is so cool.
thanks. Yeah, we not it has not been easy to build this, but
I bet.
like, really important when we think about quality over quantity. Like, we don't want to be the spammers either that are just hitting thousands of generic people hoping for the best. We want to be hyper targeted, and so we built our own.
Do you follow Kyle Coleman?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, you need to follow him. He used to work at Clary. Now he works at Copy.ai.
Hmm.
And they are releasing some really fascinating stuff over at Copy.ai in terms of doing the research on a prospect and uncovering like key things. I love what they're doing. It's a little bit beyond my price point, but I bet if you look at some of the demos that Kyle is doing, you'll come away with some ideas to continue to enhance your
Awesome.
product.
Cool. Yeah,
Plus,
thanks for the
he's
tip.
just freaking brilliant. I love what he posts. So
Amazing. Yeah. Do you have a personal relationship with him, or you like to
I've
follow?
followed him for a while. I really want to meet him in person. He lives in Denver, which is just 80 miles down the road from us. So one of these days, I'm going to reach out and say, "Can I buy you lunch?"
Yeah. What's stopping you?
80 miles of horrendous traffic.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Amazing. So we need to wrap up here in a few minutes, but we'd love dropping things. We'd love to give you an opportunity to share a little bit what you do. I know you talked about that LinkedIn quiz.
Mhm.
So what will someone get from that? Who's the right person for that? Where can they find it?
So we just released this quiz, and by the time this goes live, it'll be even a little bit more refined because I'm continuing to work on it. I'm getting awesome feedback from the people who are taking the quiz right now on how to tweak it. So you can go to propelgrowth.com/Mylance, Mylance, to find a link to that quiz. And it's going to score you in 4 areas. One is your profile and personal branding, your content strategy, your outreach strategy, and how you're using metrics to improve your strategy. And so we'll give you a score. It's quick. It's like a 3-minute quiz, and I intend to keep it really short like that. So we'll be continuing to optimize the questions, but keeping the quiz brief so that you can just kind of run through it. And then you get results and a score immediately with recommendations for things that are personalized to your specific score on how you can improve your LinkedIn strategy.
Amazing. Wow. Super cool. And we'll link it in the show notes as well so people can find it, but that sounds really interesting. Cool. And how do I know you kind of shared this at the beginning, just hit on it again for the audience. You work as a coach to help individuals do it themselves, to do the LinkedIn strategy, to grow their business. What would you add to that?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different ways that you can work with us. One is we've got on demand training. And so it's great for the solopreneur who just needs to figure it out and wants to go, DIY. Then we've got a program that is a little more advanced called the Prospecting Accelerator. And that's a small group coaching where we meet every week for a year with a small group. We're all working together. I get to know your business really well and help you to do all of those things that we were talking about. Make sure your profile is optimized. Make sure that you're speaking to the right people, that you know how to find them. And I mean, geez, Bradley, I want to use your product to help with that.
Yeah.
And then how to leverage a content strategy and that influencer strategy that I've been hinting about, and then how to send those connection requests that get a reply in a conversation with the goal of getting a meeting booked, and then how to transition that into a discovery meeting without sounding disingenuous or pissing people off because it was a bait and switch kind of thing. And then the third way that we work with clients is more one-to-one coaching on how to create the thought leadership, because I believe that, especially in the fractional space, we have so much subject matter expertise, and not everybody knows how to leverage that. And I believe that our clients live in the weeds. It's like you can have this high level TED talk, but this is not where our clients live. They live down here in the weeds. And that's what we're helping them solve problems in the weeds every day. And so using everyday client conversations, everyday internal discussions, everyday sales calls to create the kind of content that attracts your ideal prospect. And we do one-on-one coaching on that to help them get that done, and using AI actually as a support system, but without turning your business over to AI or your writing over to AI, because you still need to bring your personality in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, amazing. Sounds amazing. So yeah, we'll link all the links in the show notes here so everyone can access it easily. And just want to thank you again so much for coming on and sharing all of this wisdom. And this is I could write a book on this episode. I feel like maybe we should, but yeah, just thank you so much for the time and expertise. I think people are going to love this, and I learned a lot as well. So
Thanks for having me. I learned from you too, and I'm like super, really, really, really interested in hearing more about this tech that you've built.
Amazing. Well, we'll share more offline, but thanks again, and yeah, we'll be in touch for sure.
Okay, thank you so much.